All right, so we are now live Friday morning. Welcome to Coffee with Brent and Matt. Brent, of course, not here. Brent is on week 2 of his 2-week vacation. We're going to do a little do-si-do next week, and I will be gone on a 2-week vacation. And he may or may not be here, Ardith. God bless Brent. He's a national treasure. I tried to teach him how to use StreamYard, which we use to stream to LinkedIn the last time I had a Friday off, and it was unsuccessful. So we may or may not have this over the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping that Brent will be back. I think we had talked about a couple of guests for him to have as well. But if you're gonna upgrade from Brent, there's no better upgrade than Ardith Albee. Some of you may know her from her books around marketing and the complex sale. She's got a fantastic blog. She's just an all-around fantastic person. So Ardith, thanks for. Is this getting up early for you? I mean, we're both in the same time zone, right? Like on the West Coast, so 7 a.m. a little early.
Not really. I've been teaching a storytelling workshop that started at 7 a.m. this week, so it's kind of become normal. In fact, my dog is now insisting I get up at 4:30 in the morning for some unknown reason.
That's bad. That's a bad reinforced behavior. Dave says really competent people, so that's how we're going to start this today.
Thank you,
so
Dave.
I mean, Ardith, I feel like I met you, I think, for the first time. We were at a conference. We were hanging out with Carlos Hidalgo. There might have been some Jeff Ogden commentary, which is a whole nother story we'll just not get into.
Oh my God.
Right. Blast from the past. But I really learned a lot about buying journeys and the complexity of managing it right from you. And this is before Challenger. This is before, like, in B2B circles, buying journey, buying committees kind of got cool. But you've seen this forever, right? And I sometimes will joke, people still pine for the days when you could do a white paper download and hand it to a 23-year-old, and that was what demand gen was, and we wish it could go back to that. And I don't know that ever worked. I think we just tricked ourselves and said it worked because that's just what we knew and what we were comfortable with. And you've known that doesn't work for a very long time.
Well, there was no other option, right? Think years ago when vendors controlled all the information.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted more than that white paper, you had to go talk to a sales rep, right? There wasn't any way to get that information. I mean, that's how long I've been in this business.
So does that imply that it's not just like strategy, it's like technology and access that makes managing this more common or more reachable for more people?
Well, it depends on which side of the fence you're on, but I mean, think about now, all you have to do is go out and type something into Google or now ChatGPT, for God's sakes, and get an answer and get all kinds of different information from different sources, right? Rather than being, directed just to the specific vendors who are most prominent, right? You can find information anywhere. Part of the problem then becomes disinformation, right? There's so much stuff out there. And what buyers say is that, most of it isn't relevant. It's just blah, blah, blah stuff, which is one of the reasons I'm on this big crusade to really know your buyer and create content that is relevant and helps them do what they need to do.
Yeah. I think, you've talked for a long time about, just wishing that the term and the phrase and the action of campaigns would go away. And I think some people treat campaigns like actual campaigns. Oftentimes the email next Tuesday is thought of as the campaign. Can you talk a little bit about why and where you think campaigns are broken?
Well, most of the clients I work for sell big complex solutions that have long buy cycles. And so think about a campaign. Most campaigns are the theme of the quarter. Okay, so you're going to tell whatever story you're telling for 3 months. And then you say, okay, we're done with this story now. And you pass whatever you consider leads to sales. And then there's dead air for a while you regroup and get the next theme up. Yeah. And in the meantime, you've just gotten somebody interested, right? And maybe it takes them 6 or 8 months or 9 months, or I have a client with a 3-year sales cycle, for heaven's sakes. Takes them that long to work all the way through all their stuff, which obviously you haven't provided. So all of a sudden the story stops. The next time they hear from you, it's about your new theme. And they say, wait, I'm on this story. And they go find the rest of the information from someone else. Now, does that make sense to anybody here?
You lost me at 3-year sales cycle. So I assume that's someone selling into like the federal government or something.
No, that's somebody who sells big, huge contact centers.
Okay.
So, but most clients are 6 months to a year, somewhere in there, but still a quarter isn't going to cover it. And so we just cut them off at the knees and say, okay, we're done talking about this thing. Either solve it now or go away. We're now going to talk about this other thing over here.
That's right.
So, make the leap. And that doesn't work. And so and then there's the other thing that gets me is the discussion that's been going on a lot lately about the difference between demand gen and demand capture. And, if you believe the research, 5% of your market maybe is in market at one time. So what we're really doing with campaigns is focusing on people that are that little in-market percentage, right? We're not building the story over time. And I don't believe that demand capture and demand gen are separate. I think it's all part of the same thing, and it has to all work together. And so if you've built your story correctly, people can come in and out of your story. You're presenting it right based on the place they are in their buying, right? So then it tends to work better, or I wouldn't have been in business for so long doing this.
No kidding. Well,
I've been here
I want
a
to
long
get back
time.
to I want to get back to sort of these longer term, sort of more disciplined, approaches to marketing when you know that you've got even someone who's got a 6+ month sales cycle, that assumes that they're actually actively buying, not let alone the fact that like some of them are like poised, as Gartner phraseology, and aren't ready to pursue. But let's take the 3 to 4%, based on what Gartner says, that are like actively buying or like at the beginning of an actual buying journey. Like I hear different characteristics of demand. I hear demand generation, or I think like Dave Lewis used to call it manufacturing demand, right? So there's creating demand, there's capturing demand, and then there's identifying demand. And this is the place where I'm increasingly interested, because you don't need someone to fill out a form for them to inherently be qualified and actively buying. There are signals in the world from them, around them, that can indicate that they have a need, and so you can still respond to that in kind. So I'm curious, when you think about like generating demand, proactively going and creating it, capturing demand based on people that are responding to something, versus just seeing it, like being open and listening for it and seeing it and responding in kind, do you see those as 3 viable distinctions? Are some better than others? Or should we be de-emphasizing some over others?
That's a hard one to answer. I would say that it starts with how well do you understand your target audience, right? Who's really buying from you? And I've been through projects where everybody's convinced they need to talk to the C-level of whatever, and yet who really is doing this whole buying process are, director and their team, right? So lower. And so are we creating content that really speaks to who needs it? And I think it's really interesting that quite often when I talk to people about who is your buyer, they'll give me a title and I'll say, great, what's a day in their life like? And I get a blank stare and they can't tell me. Well, how are we writing content that's going to engage these people and help them move forward and, learn what they need to know? We assume that buying is their main job, but it's not, right? They're doing their day job. They're really busy. And so they have to learn all this other stuff. And now you take this point where they can get information anywhere they want. So now they want to go self-educate, but they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
So now you see this thing like Matt Dixon's book, The Jolt Effect, fear of messing up. And then you hear Brent talk about lack of confidence, and you hear, all of these things, which are all a result of this. I'm going to self-educate and learn what I need to know. I'm not talking to pesky vendors and, what have you. And I've been reading the research for years, since they started doing research on B2B buyers. And it's like, they have consistently told us again and again and again, help us, quit pitching us, give us something relevant, support your premises with, research and facts. Tell me something new that I don't know, and help me do my job better. And we're not doing it. I mean, I just wrote a month and a half ago, I wrote a post because I found this report called The Power of Provocation, where it was like 100, it wasn't a big study, but it was like 100 C-levels, CFO, CEO, COO, whatever, 100 of them. 1% of them said that marketing showed a meaningful reflection of the human experience. 1%. Now, if that doesn't scare the crap out of you, I don't know what should, you know?
I don't think I've ever heard that phrase like that. Like so can you say that again?
Yeah. And the blog is it's on my website. It's called Going Bold or Fading to Beige. You can also find it under my LinkedIn profile, but it's the Power of Provocation report. And what it found was 1% of C-level executives said that marketing demonstrated, let me see, I always demonstrated a meaningful expression of the human experience. So really, that just kind of floors me.
Like how I'm embarrassed to say I've never thought of it that way, because I mean what is marketing if not that? What is marketing if not sort of reaching people where they are, helping them like rethink things that matter to them? Like meaningful expression of the human experience sounds like that should be like the objective of marketing, in a way that it creates, in a way that it minimizes, if not eliminates, friction. Like you think about, like, and I wrote about this last night. I was thinking, like, so I listened to the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast. Like, I just think he's just an incredibly funny dude, and I literally can't listen to the podcast like on an airplane because I just laugh out loud. I just like it'll be embarrassing. But like his commercials, you have to listen to his commercials. Like most podcasts, you fast forward because they're just boring, scripted, right? Like he every one of his commercials he reads. He's allowed to do whatever he wants with them. He can comment, he can like make commentary, he can make jokes about it, he can use funny voices, he gets his sidekicks involved. Like the commercials are a bit, right? So the commercials become something that are part of the show that are just as good as the show. So like if I'm enjoying his comedy and I'm like off on a walk or doing whatever and just enjoying his comedy, the commercials are interruptive in most cases. In his case, I'm like, I'm just going to keep listening because it's just going to be more Conan.
And how often does that happen?
Well, so I would assume that most advertisers would have none of that. They'd be like, he's going to say something just to, he's going to like make fun of us, or like, I really wanted to follow the script because the script's on brand, right?
No.
And those are the commercials that you ignore. Those are the commercials that you pass by. So, but I think also the human experience, to your point, is like, you reach someone Tuesday at 10 o'clock. It used to be like in their office. Maybe they're at their home or whatever they're working. Like your solution and the outcome it represents is a tiny fraction of what's on their mind right now, and a tiny fraction of the things that are interesting to them or things that have their attention. How do you put your story in that context in a way that makes it interesting? And I think I know you do a ton of work around storytelling, a ton of workshops, and I have clients around this. It seems like a B2B, that story, the ability to do storytelling and to go from being interruptive to irresistible is a real lost art, if it ever was an art in B2B marketing.
Well, and here's the problem. I mean, I still, if you just look at the research CMI puts out or Demand Gen Report or whatever, marketers' challenges, when you look at their top challenges, how to even target the right buyers.
Yeah.
Understanding their buyers, but then when you see their priorities, getting to know their buyers better is always at the bottom of the list. But yet without that information and insight, how do you do all the other stuff? Right. So I consistently get frustrated and scream at the wall because it's like, connect the dots, right? You've got to look at these different things and how they fit together before you can actually achieve those things, the other things, right? And buyers come first. If you don't know them, it's just like I said, when I say, tell me about a day in the life of your buyer, and nobody can.
Yeah.
How do you write content when you can't even picture the person beyond their title? And the thing for me, when I build personas, one of the things that I have to really educate about is a persona is not about a title. I've built personas that can apply to 15 different titles, depending on the target market, because it's about roles and responsibilities, not title, right?
Yeah. So let's, I mean, if you're in marketing, if you're enlightened enough to sort of think, yes, this makes sense, I think you're in the minority. And if you're in marketing doing this, you have to compete against those that say like, okay, but where's the leads? Okay, but what pipeline came from that today? We talked earlier about like, executives that want just something shiny new. Like, I am bored of that campaign. Show me some new ideas. If I don't get new ideas from you, I'm assuming you're not doing your job and you're not working hard enough. There is a mindset, a patience, a discipline that is required to do this well. It's not always the sexiest work in the world, because sexy means new great ideas, new ads, whatever, but that's not what gets the job done. So our pursuit of sexy, shiny for ourselves, quite frankly, is what gets in the way of creating that storyline and through line with the buyer that really attracts them to you.
Well, and if you look at just psychology and habit forming and whatever in general, it's repetition, consistent repetition.
Right.
And so that doesn't mean saying exactly the same thing over and over again, but it means, sharing your point of view and perspective about a topic from a variety of angles so that you can hit on a sweet spot that resonates with a variety of people in that target segment. I mean, marketing's job, in my opinion, is to reach the widest swath of people in a target market, right? And convince them of something. And it takes repetition of the story. And so we get bored, like you said. We've seen it. Our execs have seen it, whatever. But it's also this thing about give me something new, like somebody's going to see it, download it, go to sales and get sold, is basically ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's not the new thing. It's actually, do you have the fortitude to stick with the story so that it gets to impact level? And the thing that I find is if I can just get clients to try this and start implementing the story across the entirety of the buying process, once they've been through a cycle, it starts building momentum, right? Because more people are still working their way through it. And so then you start getting that, increased momentum of qualified accounts coming in, where if you just run the 3-month campaign and then say, well, that didn't work, let's try something new, it's because you never gave it enough time or you weren't telling the right story, right? And so you gave up on your buyers instead of sticking with them, right? And helping them learn what they need to know. And so trying to get people, the clients that I have worked for repeatedly over the years, and I have some I've worked with for a heck of a long time, they keep coming back to put together a new approach to a new market or whatever, because it works, but they've given it the time to gain that traction. And part of it is we cut it off at the knees before it gets a chance to get there. And we're also not supporting our sales team. 72% of buyers say that the handoff from marketing to sales sucks, and that it's rocky, and that there's no coordination, and the story just kind of stops and then restarts wherever the sales rep starts it from, instead of it being a continuation. So what's up with that?
Okay, well, how do you teach salespeople to be better at storytelling?
Well, I think we need to, first of all, we do a campaign, right? The campaign's over, and then we throw stuff at sales and say, here you go, have fun. Well, where's the story in that?
Right.
So if you have built the story across the whole buying journey, at some point that salesperson gets involved, right? And if you've built it across, then there is content to continue on. We have the technology now where we can say, okay, here's this lead or this account, here's all this stuff they've read, here's the suggested for next steps to build the story. We've built it all, right? Because we're telling the story across the entirety. And there you go. And there's heck, I worked for Modus as VP for a year, and they sell sales enablement technology. There's technology that can set it up for your sales teams. They can actually build deal rooms where they're adding content that extends the story from wherever the buyer was when they transitioned over, right? That can involve the whole sales team. So, I mean, it's not like we don't have the facility to make this work.
Oh, the facility is there. I just don't think it's prioritized. You still have too many salespeople that are just on to the next step in the sales process. You get too many BDRs that are so focused and, quite frankly, so directed and incented to just get the next meeting set up that the entire focus is the meeting, not the reason why you should go there in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their focus, and you're supposed to get that meeting as fast as possible. And the faster you go, the less time and oxygen and space you have to be able to not just tell a compelling story, but get the prospect to actually be part of it and believe in it. And so I think go ahead.
But here's the thing. We seem to think we're in control of that. I mean, if you look at, the buying process that you've created or the sales cycle, whatever you want to call it, and your stages and all of this, that's not for your buyer. They're not saying, hey, today I'm in awareness. I mean, none of this stuff is for your buyer. It's for you to manage a process. We fail to flip our view and look at it from their side. And, especially given the, pushback from buyers saying we are going to self-serve our education, we are going to do this at our pace. It's because we keep pushing them and they're saying, we don't want to talk to vendors. We know what happens once we get in there. We know exactly what happens. We don't want that. We want to, do what we need to do on our own and, not be pushed and, find what we think is relevant. Well, in my opinion, what a huge opportunity for marketing, right?
It's an enormous opportunity.
Tell a story with momentum and get them moving, then sales should be happy campers when they get those buyers.
Well, in this, to your point, this isn't a new idea, right? Like, I think, sometimes, we think, oh, like we're inventing this ourselves and like we're setting new precedents. Like, no, you're not. Like company have been doing this forever. I think sometimes, like, as a marketer, if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, we need to adopt more of a storytelling mindset. We need to adopt more of a consistency around the message and the approach we have to our prospects. Like, there are countless examples out there of companies you can emulate. I mean, I know on your website, Marketing Interactions, you're going to read case studies, you're going to see stories, you're going to see evidence of doing this. And I think that the gap between the winners and losers are going to continue to increase as our prospects have less and less time, as AI democratizes even further the ability to write campaigns and send emails and make phone calls. It's not going to get better. Like, everyone's all excited about what it can do. And look, it does have a lot of potential, but right now people are getting excited about it being faster and cheaper. That is the seller's challenge, the seller's advantage, and it's not the problem that needs to be solved to make it more effective for the buyer.
You don't even want to get me started on that.
I might actually, yes.
Oh my gosh. I have some people who've been trying out ChatGPT who think that it can just replace the intelligence and the creativity and curiosity of the brain because it can whip it out in a heartbeat. And it just, I just, you don't want to get me started.
Well, no, this is meant for, this show is meant to be informative, but also a form of entertainment. So let's go down that road because seriously, like, I think ChatGPT is not a replacement. It's an assistant. It's helping people, like, the whole, as a creator, as a writer, like, I don't have to have writer's block anymore. Like, that shitty first draft is going to be done for me by someone that's going to churn something out that is not ready for prime time at all, but like gives me a huge head start as a writer and as a content creator. Right. The examples of the AI driven emails I've seen so far, just they remind me of some of the SEO content written like 15 years ago, stuffed with keywords, technically accurate, unreadable, like just not.
There's no emotional value. There's no creativity. It's just like a child in kindergarten, maybe third or fourth grade, learning how to write basic sentence structure, Yeah. But here's the thing. Our good friend, Andy Crestodina, calls me and says, I'm, writing this article about building personas with ChatGPT. Do you have an opinion? I said, oh, you don't want to get me started. And so we got on this call and he showed me what he's doing. And I'm looking at the output and I'm like, how does it know that? It's saying all these things definitively about this is what the buyer thinks. And I'm like, how does it know that? And in what context? And so, he published this post and I'm the detractor voice in the post that argues with him all the way through it. And it was a riot, but we spent a good hour going through this and just, ripping it apart and putting it back together. And the problem with it is it could have been right. However, there's no way to know because it makes stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no sourcing, there's no, that kind of thing. I've used it to say, give me I put in a prompt about, you're this kind of buyer and you're setting out to solve this problem, whatever. Tell me what steps the buyer would go through. And it writes these journeys up that are sort of believable, but then there's these leaps of faith, right? That you can see if you've done this for a long time. And it's kind of like, and then you have to refine it, go back and, put in some more steps here, make it harder to get executive buy-in, make it, but it's just kind of like a fantasy fairy tale storyline. Like everything works in the buyer's favor. If you know anything about storytelling, story is about conflict and escalating tension, because that's the only way you keep people moving forward, right? Otherwise you're bored. It's like starting with, Matt got up this morning and brushed his teeth and drank a cup of coffee. Well, I'm already clicking on to the next thing,
Right.
because there's nothing going on, right? And
I,
so,
I find myself using the phrase, until robots sell to robots, when I talk about sort of the opportunity and limitations of tools like ChatGPT. I mean, like, look, there's the fundamental challenge that, like, we're all getting excited about it. It's got huge potential. It's still ripe with errors, as Renee pointed out. Like, ChatGPT hallucinates. It trains itself on the hallucination, and then the further evidence. I've seen plenty of sort of articles talking about just the sort of model deterioration over time, right? That will get programmed out of it. It'll get better. But I also think, we respond to emotional stories. We respond to art. We respond to each other, right?
Mhm.
I think, we are, I'm an introverted person, but we are all social animals. Like, we are hardwired to want to engage with each other. And I think even if you're using a passive tool like social media or email or Slack or whatever, you can embed that social connection. You can embed the humanity into that channel and story. And that still is something that is unique to human creation and human experiences. And look, I mean, I'm all for, like, if companies want to say, I can write faster, cheaper, and get excited about the process improvements and the efficiency of using AI. Efficiency is great. I'll continue to create art, and I think have an advantage because it's more attractive and resonates better with people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. I mean, I'm a writer at heart, and play
Mm.
with fiction when I'm not writing business stuff, and all kinds of other things, which is why I love storytelling so much.
Yeah.
But there is a difference, that emotional quality that really, in B2B, for some reason we like to think our buyers are totally rational and logical because it's business, but they're still
Mhm.
human. And there's a lot of emotion built into what they do every day. Think about pride in your job. Think about, achieving a goal that helps your company. And
Yeah.
think about fear of messing up. That's emotional. Think about,
Yeah.
evaluating risk and all of those things. And there's elements of emotion in all of those things. It's not cut and dried. And in fact, research proves that our decisions are made based on the emotion we feel about something, and then justified with logic later. So you've got to have both.
All right, so I hadn't thought about this way until now. So, I got a friend yesterday who's growing his business, and he's like, where are some, what are some resources I can, I've got some people that I want them to become better copywriters. Like, what are some resources they can use to become better writers? And so I sent them Ann Handley's books. I sent them Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins, which is still one of my favorite marketing books of all time. It's about 100 years old. Very good copy. There's a .com, like, some really good blogs out there. The challenge with copywriting, though, is that copywriting too often can be a very technical act.
Mhm.
I'm not I don't say I'm a trained writer. I'm a trained journalist. I studied journalism, political science in school. And as a journalist, you're not taught to write, you're taught to tell stories, right?
Mhm.
It's about saying, like, how do you take something complex and big and boil it down so that you've got this much space to talk about it? How do you make it accessible? How do you make it relatable? And I think, like, I hadn't thought about this before, but, like, someone who writes fiction has the same skills. Like, good fiction is storytelling. And if
Mhm.
you bring the skills you've learned as a journalist and as a fiction writer to B2B, that is a phenomenal skill to have, to be able to still tell stories that actually get people's attention.
Mhm. It is, and it's hard to, when you say storytelling in B2B, most people think of case studies, which are
Yeah.
anything but stories, right?
Yeah.
They're made to they make the product the hero and the company the hero, and everything works like a dream. There's never any problem implementing this huge complex technology solution, which we all know is not true.
Right.
And anybody who's ever implemented anything knows that. But or it's the CEO standing on a stage at a conference sharing an anecdote. Well, there are lots of other versions of stories. In fact, in the workshop I'm teaching right now, because I have to get stuff on a slide, I use 6-word stories to make a point. And think about telling a story in 6 words.
Exactly.
And one of the most famous ones is attributed to Hemingway, and it says, "For sale, baby shoes, never worn." That's a complete story. Think about that. 6 words. And so it's there can be, you can tell a story in a social media post, for heaven's sakes. Just think about what gets lost is the meaning of the words and the ideas that they can evoke in whoever reads them. We want to put it all on the page, like we're dictating what it means, but the interpretation is always up to the reader, and we forget that, and how to help people make that idea their own by allowing them to extrapolate out the meaning.
Well, we are out of time. I could go on like this forever, but I need to let you get back to your day as well. Thank you for doing this. I mean, you've been a regular kind of listening to Brent and I rattle on for a while, but I really appreciate you joining. I think this concept of, just storytelling for B2B. I know you talk about it all the time. You write about it. You have that's all your business. It just feels like no matter where you are in marketing, even if you're in marketing operations, right? Like understanding the impact of story, like what you do with your technology, what you do with your tools impacts how that story lands.
Well, sales too. Sales is all about story. It may be more conversational than content based, but sales has to continue that story that marketing started. And, the way they hold those conversations is storytelling.
So thank you. I can't remember who did it earlier here. Posted your article about sort of gold and fading to beige. So definitely check that out for sure. Marketinginteractions.com, at Ardith421 on Twitter. Thank you so much, Ardith. You're the best.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm not sure I held up Brent's seat very well, but it was fun to be here.
Well, no, Brent is the stereotypical. I don't know if you've ever read Patrick Lencioni's book on the working genius. And so but the book, it takes 6 different sort of competencies of leaders, and it says like most of us are good at 1 or 2 of those, and then we're competent at the other 4. And the whole idea is figuring out what are the 1 or 2 things that you're really good at that you could spend all day doing, and it gives you energy versus takes your energy, right? And the very top, it goes from like very sort of very esoteric to theoretical to like executional, right? And the top one is what they call wonder, and it's all about just asking questions, questioning everything, rethinking. And that if you have to be in execution mode, that is a very frustrating person to be. Brent to me is quintessential wonder, right? Like oftentimes you probably notice, like I will say something and I'm halfway through it and he's already questioning it, right? Like his brain is already exploding with different reasons why that might not be working. To me, like a good researcher has to have a high degree of wonder, and Brent has that for sure.
He certainly does. I enjoy watching you guys. It's fun on a Friday morning.
Look, it's fun for me too, and this has been a blast, Ardith. So thank you so much for doing this. Thank you, Renee, Dave, Tripp, Wayne, just a ton of folks who are some of our regulars, some new folks checking us out. Thanks so much for doing this. I cannot promise that Brent will be here in the next couple of weeks. I will be in North County, San Diego with my family, enjoying beach, tacos, naps, not necessarily in that order. See if we can get Brent onto the StreamYard. Worst case, we will be back the week after 4th of July. For our regularly scheduled weekly Friday morning. So thanks again, Ardith. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you all next time.